Welcome to Season 3 of Malevolent Autopsy. I'm your host, Queen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so excited to be here with you all. Now, let me warn you, the show contains major spoilers for everything in Malevolent as of the day this episode is published, so if you're not caught up, I'm not liable. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask my lovely co-host, what part of Arthur's body are you betting on getting injured this week?
His emotional barriers. Like, they've gone down a lot, but we can always just keep swinging at those walls.
This very smart choice. I agree with you. I think I'll take that bet. Who are you? You're not Vol. What are you doing here?
I am Pie, also known as Takeover. I use she, her, and I am just happy to be here.
Vol is still on his road trip. I think he comes back tonight, though, so he should be here next week. And I am so pleased to have Pie join us for a very special autopsy. We are going to have a lot of conversation. We have over 15 submissions, so we have a lot to get through. But first and foremost, Pie, would you like to read our summary for us?
I'd love to. This week's chapter opens back with the choice between biting Lilith's hand or our own. Arthur himself seems a bit surprised at what he's about to do, but cedes to Lilith and bites down. Lilith takes control of the body as Arthur passes out. Cut to a voice we've gone far too long from hearing. John yells at Arthur, urging him to fight this, and he awakes. While Arthur was out, Lilith found their way to the lake. Arthur realizes that when the roots took hold of their hand, she did not pull away until their entire finger had been consumed. She mocks Arthur for trusting her, insists that he is only a means to an end, calls him pathetic for sympathizing with the person who killed his parents, and claims he fundamentally misunderstands her. She isn't the one who needs convincing on the nature of humanity, and she is going to make him remember why he's come so close to giving up on hope before. Arthur remains silent as he follows her increasingly aggressive instructions. Navigating to the hut by the lake, he clothes himself and takes the blade and necklace. Lilith describes a monstrous figure on the dock, but Arthur isn't falling for that, and tells the Canna that he cannot stop the voice that's hurting him. Lork tells him that he's always been able to, and Arthur silences Lilith. Him unable to hear her, and her unable to hear him. Lork invites Arthur to sit with him and gives some advice. Arthur tries to ask about John and how to defeat Cain, but is stopped. He has time for one more question.
Thank you so much, Pie, for this lovely summary. I think that was a great, concise way to wrap up a very dense chapter. It was like 20 minutes this week. Feels crazy to look at the beginning of it, where they're just starting off doing something that we've heard Arthur do before, and by the end we're having him meet somebody he's met before, and I don't know, it felt very like a full circle chapter to me this week.
They are getting more and more packed.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get longer and longer chapters. So since we have so much to talk about, I won't spend too much time talking about the chapter, but Pie, what was your carrot this week?
Honestly, my carrot is being on the losing side of whether or not to bite Lilith. I quite enjoy being on the losing side because either I am wrong and everything is peachy, or I was right and I still get those juicy consequences of our actions.
I appreciate the candid honesty about that. I was on the winning side, unfortunately, and man, I have big regrets. I have, in some cases, like, there are some things I'm really glad that happened because I think it was a good opportunity to say these things, but ultimately, yeah, I regret my vote. But that's okay. It happens. There's so many votes that you're eventually going to have one that you wish you had voted differently in.
So. I don't regret your vote. I think it's a great character moment.
And what was your stick?
The first 14 minutes. He's not even allowed to cry.
Yeah, that was tough. Hearing her mock him for crying was really hard.
So how about you?
As far as my carrot, I wrote down the quote from Lilith, which is, I am not a blank slate. I have toyed with humanity for eons upon eons. There is no room for you to paint your picture of humanity. I historically love me a good villain, and I especially love when the villain gets to be a villain. And this was Lilith's big moment. I feel like, even if it hadn't always been planned that way, I think this was such a good moment for us to really get to know how she thinks and what her experience has been and what her goals are. I think it was very telling. I loved her performance of every word. She speaks with such intention. Like, all of her dialogue is delivered with this like venom that you can just feel in every syllable. I thought it was beautifully acted with this incredibly believable amount of like vitriol and spite and bitterness and hatred, but also enough to where it did, like, I wasn't annoyed by her monologuing. I was like fascinated in that car crash in slow motion way where, like, I know she's evil, but I can't look away. It's so good. I loved it. It was great. I loved all of the back and forth and how she was really trying to paint herself as really distinct from John, and laying it out there for the listener that this is not meant to be the same thing, a do-over. This is a completely different game. And I really appreciated that, even though maybe it could have come up in different ways later. I think it just fit in right here, and I liked it a lot.
She is so mean and she's so fun to listen to.
Yes. Oh my God. She's so fun to listen to. I think Harlan does a great job with her voice. I am very impressed. And as far as my stick, her saying, "It's not my body, kid," that's going to kick ass later. That's going to come back to be like, why would I warn you about this thing you are about to step on? It's not my body. Like, her lack of ownership over what happens to Arthur is so scary. I don't like it. I miss it when people cared that Arthur was okay. I really took for granted that the guy sharing Arthur's body wanted to make sure he wasn't just alive, but like thriving as much as he possibly could in the terrible conditions that he was in. Like, John wouldn't have let his legs get scraped up. And that's not because it would kill him to have his legs scraped up, but because that does something to your morale. It does something to your stamina. It's not a nice thing, and John didn't want that for Arthur, and that's not something Lilith gives a shit about. She may not want Arthur dead, but she doesn't need him happy either. And that is really scary. Don't love that.
John understood morale as a resource.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because we have so many submissions, I am going to pop right into the vote this week. And for public listeners, non-patrons, let me just explain this to you. I had to write this out because it was so complicated for me to get all straight in my head. This week marks another historic vote. The chapter dropped on Monday around 5:30 Eastern, and an hour and a half later at 7 Eastern, Great Old Ones, which is currently the highest tier of support you can give on the Invictus Patreon, we were given a submission sheet to create questions for Arthur to ask Lorik. Harlan then said he would pick 3 that were submitted and pass the vote off to the Voices patrons. Voices patrons are I think the third, either the second or the third tier on the Patreon, $10 and up. So everybody who is a Voices or a Shamer or Great Old One can vote on those selected options. Then by 6 p.m. Eastern, the poll went live for Voices patrons with 7 questions. So he said he was going to pick 3, but he came out with 7. And on Friday around 8:30 in the morning, he announced that the poll had to close early. So we're recording this on a Sunday, which is unusual for Autopsy, but not that unusual. However, we are recording with the vote already landed squarely and firmly in one specific direction. So we know what won already. But before we go into those 7 options that Harlan hand selected, I want to note a few important aspects of this vote. Harlan let the Voices and Up patrons know about the write-in, while Great Old Ones were still able to submit questions. So some Great Old Ones were able to take inspiration from the Voices plus suggestions. The Great Old Ones also had a separate channel to discuss the vote and create a thread of submitted questions to be sure they didn't submit duplicates, although I do want to note that there were no limits placed on how many questions a Great Old One could submit. And I also want to mention that due to the smaller audience, there's a much smaller number of Great Old Ones than there are any other tier, because it is the highest tier of support on Patreon for the Invictus stream. Harlan was able to open a short, informative dialogue with the kinds of questions that might land better in the story at this moment. So the Great Old Ones were led to submit questions more strategically as a result of those conversations. It wasn't anything spoilery, it wasn't anything significant, but it was a really good way for Harlan to be able to cleanly communicate with the Great Old Ones about what general direction he had in mind for the next chapter without spoiling anything or making it, difficult for us to enjoy in the future. Pie, I if you're okay with me sharing, you are a Voices tier patron, and so you had a very different experience of this, but this was kind of the behind the scenes portion of what the Great Old Ones went through to get to this point. So here is a short selection of questions that were submitted, but Harlan did not choose, to show the variety that Harlan was given to choose from by the Great Old Ones. So we had questions like, where is John? Where do we have to go to reunite with John? Is John safe? How can Cain be stopped? How do I get Lilith to work with me? Where is Anastanchik? How can I prevent Cain from using the obelisk? What advice do you think is most important for me to have? How can my love save everyone when I ruin everything I touch? Will any of me be left at the end of this? And there was even a question that said, let Arthur ask what he really wants to ask. From all of that and more, we got the 7 questions that Harlan chose, which were, am I a good person? Which only had 1 voter this week, 0%, according to Patreon, who rounds, I believe they round down. Will it all be okay in the end at 9%, 40 voters. Why me was 46%, 210 voters was the winning option. How do I let go had 31% of the vote, which was for 142 patrons. Why do you help was 4% of the vote at 16 voters. Is Cain right had another 4% with 17 voters. And will I see my daughter again at 6% with 28 voters, for a total of 454 people who were able to cast their vote. And I know that due to the early poll closure time and the chaos around how this was all structured, some people didn't get to vote at all. We usually hit way above 500. So there's a good amount of people who were not able to cast their vote. However, I do think this was a good representation of what the majority was going to be no matter what. I think the why me winning option was very strongly campaigned for, and you will see that reflected in our voice submissions tonight. But Pie, would you like to share your thoughts about how the vote went from your perspective and maybe how you voted?
Yes, I honestly didn't think I saw much campaigning. Or, yes, there's a lot of campaigning, but not a lot of debate going on, which I had kind of expected because Arthur is at such an emotional point. This is an emotional vote. You can't really try to convince someone other than their gut. And you just got to vote with what spoke to you. Like, I'm very relieved with the options that were picked, that they're all very Arthur seeking some form of reassurance or emotional guidance, as opposed to trying to get the maximum possible information out of a vote, because that is usually the kind of person I very much am. But this time I just went with what did I think would sound most desperate coming out of Arthur's voice, and I picked why me.
Yeah, I will say that candidly, the Great Old Ones chat, I was active in there when we were trying to think of questions. I did not personally submit anything. I thought everybody got to all the good questions and I have no brain after that. So I will say that before we were before we had any conversations or interaction with Harlan, we were all kind of in the same direction. I think there were still several people, obviously, who were going toward the more emotional route, but there was definitely a lot of conversations about how we had to be really careful with how we worded things and trying to get really specific information. And we understood that Lorik was going to be kind of, some people were treating Lorik as kind of a genie. Some people were treating it like we had to be more broad to get the best swath of answers. Some people were wondering, can I ask kind of two questions in one sentence if I just keep it to a sentence, that kind of thing. So I won't say that Great Old Ones were always on the right track. Like in the very beginning, I think a lot of us were also very practical minded and trying to get a concrete answer about a goal like how to defeat Cain or where John is. And those questions, as you guys all heard, got asked. They were an option. Harlan could have picked that if he wanted to, but he didn't. And I think it's interesting to note what was not chosen as much as what was actually chosen as a poll option. I think it might be pretty telling about what we might learn in the upcoming chapters of Malevolent. So I think it's pretty fascinating to see when given a slew of options, and there were definitely more than I read off, like the ones that didn't get selected. I didn't want to drag them all out for 10 minutes reading all of the questions we submitted, what he chose to be the best beat for this next leg of the story. So I thought it was a very cool process. I, as a Great Old One, really enjoyed it. I think it was also a fun collaboration because the write-ins were open while the voices knew about it, but they couldn't submit. Only the Great Old Ones could. So the Great Old Ones got to have conversation with the voices and like collaborate with them in a really fun kind of community spirit way. And I thought that was neat. Did you happen to be part of that at all, Pi?
Yeah, it seems like it just wound up as a very effective filtering system because I don't think I saw
Yeah.
anyone ever have their request denied to have their questions submitted for them. It just seems like it was saving Harlan from scrolling through 2,000 Google Docs submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a really good filtering system. And I think it was also really fun because Harlan was able to tell a small portion of people what his vision was without spoiling it for everybody. And it wasn't spoiled for us either. He really was good about preserving the magic of figuring out what the hell was going to happen. I still don't know what's going to happen. I'm very excited about the next chapter. I'm kind of in the mode of hurry up and get to the next part already. I've said it before. I'm getting to the point of Malevolent as we wind down to where I'm like, okay, nice vote. Let's, I want to know what's going to happen next.
One more sleep till Malevolent.
Yeah, vote is almost becoming secondary for me now, which is crazy to say, but I still really enjoyed it, and I liked getting in there and seeing what people were talking about as far as why things should be important, what kind of questions should be submitted, what had already been submitted. So Great Old Ones were trying to be very strategic about it. I know that it was a very in-depth experience for Great Old Ones, and I didn't see too much like disappointment of what was chosen, but I do know that there are some submissions that we have that express some feelings about certain things. So I want to make sure we leave space for everybody to share how they felt about this vote, while also keeping in mind that unlike most Malevolent polls, these questions were written by real people who are just people, and they are just patrons who are supporting the show like everyone else. Whether their question was selected or included in the poll or won the poll, I think I just want to emphasize, especially to the public who doesn't have a touchstone to understand this, this is a very exceptional thing, and please be mindful of what you say and in front of whom and how you speak about these options, because these people are just fans, they are just people, and we should all remember that it is just a fictional story, it is just a game. These folks who submitted and worked hard on their questions and got selected or not, they are probably listening and they are probably sharing this fan space with you. So be cool. And I don't think I have any reason to really say that. Like, everyone's traditionally pretty darn cool, but this is just in case. And with that all being said, I would love to go through some voice submissions with you, Pi. We are going to start off with this one.
Hi, it's Moony, go by she, her. And from all the cool stuff from this chapter, I want to talk about the reminder of how maddening it is to have someone in your head. Because we get used to John's purring and care, but this chapter actually got me in this crippling feeling that you can't trust what you hear and you don't know what's going on around you. And you got your darkest moments spilled on you nonstop. And you can't get rid of this voice, this someone. You can't punch it, you can silence it. Well, and it seems like it's nothing you can do to fight, and you're alone to fight it. I always valued my sanity and mental health. I'm really lucky with this, but every time I'm imagining all of the above, I really feel tendrils of panic in my gut. Well done, Harlan, as always. Cheers.
Thank you so much for your submission, Moony. I really appreciate your contribution.
These latest chapters really do feel so different with that. I haven't realized how much of a safety net John has been to keep the tone down from just pure terror.
Yeah, this chapter in particular that really hit home for me more than I think any other chapter of Malevolent. The horror of having a voice in your head. Even any of John's early stuff, none of that freaked me out as much as this chapter did. And I don't know why. I wonder if it's like something to do with the whole controlling his body thing or what. It was really scary. Okay, I'm going to move right along to this next one.
Hello, autopsies. Gogoat here. Any pronouns. I would like to sincerely apologise for being pro Arthur Finger, though in all honesty I think it would have had a fairly similar outcome. It would have probably been minus Arthur getting driven like a vehicle for a few hours, but we might not have gotten the John vision, so I think that's a good trade. Also, this feels like a chapter that I'm not going to be smart enough for, but I'm going to try my best. I've got some unpacking to do of what Lorik had to say about Lilith, but I also want to mention the difference in John and Lilith's reaction when seeing Lorik. I re-listened to part 19 the other day, and when John sees Lorik, he just goes, "Oh, he's small." It's like sort of a very sweet reaction, versus Lilith who's just like, "Oh, it's hideous." I like that difference. I like that a lot. I think that's kind of funny. That's a good segue into my actual points, though. Lilith is not John or Yellow. We cannot work with her in the same way. But Lorik's words have also made me think that choosing kindness is important. So, I need to make it clear, this is not me saying biting off Arthur's finger was a good move, even though I voted for it. There is a difference between kindness and bending to her will. We should show her kindness, but that was not it. And Lorik was our reminder. Lilith is vicious, as Arthur said, but I think Lorik's words about showing her hope were true. I read a book the other day with a quote that said, "No one is fewer than two things. She's angry and she wants control, but there's whispers of her grief and hurt in her actions. She is more than her violence. She is bright. She has done good too."
Thank you, Gogoat. We have another submission from Gogoat that will come later on. I tried to separate these into chapter thoughts and questions that were submitted before the write-in was cemented and then after the write-in was cemented. So we have a few sections, and this is just the general chapter thoughts section. And Gogoat, I love that quote, "No one is fewer than two things." That's very beautiful and very poignant and very malevolent, I think.
That is such an apt quote. I don't think I could compare that better than Gogoat did.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I'm very excited. This chapter, I think, especially enriched Lilith's character in a way that made me really excited to learn about what she's going to become and what's going to happen with her, and if Arthur is going to have as much impact on that as I think he will.
Hi, this is Misraa, pronoun she, they, and last chapter in a comment on the Discord, I said I was loving the Lilith and Arthur team up too much to miss John, but I take it all back. I still love Lilith, but she's also terrible. And we got to hear John's voice, and that just makes me miss him even more. I love how present John has been in these chapters, just like in season 3 when he and Arthur were separated. Arthur right away calling out for John, comparing a lot of what Lilith says and does to John, and when he gets a chance to ask Lorik for more questions, the first one he thinks of is to ask about John. And when Lilith was about to take over, it was John's voice that he imagined, yelling at him to keep going, being the source of his will to continue on. I know Harlan will bring John back at the right moment, a time that will be emotionally satisfying for the story, and having them apart now lets Arthur have this dynamic with Lilith and John a chance to be on his own. But I really miss him. I wasn't a patron in season 3 and joined not long after the parts The Nightmare and The Butcher, where John wasn't heard in those either, so now I'm going through John withdrawals and being insufferable about it.
Thank you, Misraa, for your submission. And yes, I think quite a lot of people are going through some John withdrawals. I've seen a lot of I miss John, and there was a very strong voice around the poll mines when I peeked my head in a few times this last few days for trying to ask about where John is and if he's okay and how do we get back to him.
Even if he's not physically in Arthur's head, you can't get rid of him that easily.
Pie, where do you think John is?
I have the bad answers I don't want to think about, and I don't know. All I care about is the internal Johnologue right now, because I don't want to think about where he is.
Oh, yeah, I think having John be the get back up, keep fighting voice was really, really nice. I think it was a treat. I don't know if we would have got that if we had voted any other way. What do you think?
A small price to pay for hearing John again.
Yes, yes. The last time that I think we got Arthur needing a voice to carry on was in part 20 when he heard Faro, right? I think so. Or not part 20, but right after, I think, when they got spit out. Someone in the chat, Coda, there we go, Coda. And Faro says, "You're going to die." Which,
You're going to die.
Yeah, very cheerful little kid voice. "You're going to die." I think it's very cool that the important people in Arthur's life get to come back
He will
into his
still
head and
carry
live
them
him.
with him.
Yeah, I love it. All right, let's play the next one.
Hello again, Autopsy. It's Spade again. I wanted to focus more on Lilith and Lorik's interaction, specifically on Lilith's part, but also Lorik. Lilith's first reaction to Lorik is very interesting to me. I initially thought Lilith was just overly panicked for no reason because Lilith believes he's a danger or whatever, but I realize it's probably not the case. Lilith knows who Lorik is because she herself mentioned that she's seen Arthur's whole life, even the parts he wouldn't want to talk about. Lilith knows who Lorik is from the previous time Arthur's met him, similar to how she mentioned seeing the box in the cabin before Arthur himself went there this time. She knew Lorik could provide Arthur with information to use against her, which he did. I think Lilith knew the whole time that Arthur could silence her, and was just hoping no one would tell him. That person being Lorik. And to point about a very specific Lorik dialogue is when he goes, "Hope is not what she had when she chose you for a higher purpose. And then you were her favorite." Makes it seem like Arthur was her favorite and then was given a higher purpose by her while he was a child. I wonder what he could have done to make him her favorite and what that higher purpose was. That is all. Bye-bye.
We're going to hear from Spade again later. Thank you so much for your submission. But I loved that Spade pointed out, to me at least, it was very obvious that Lilith knew exactly who Lorik was, especially after she just finished telling Arthur, "I have combed through all of your history, your experiences." It's so obvious that Lilith, to me, takes on kind of the position of the patrons and then some, because Lilith has basically listened to Arthur's life as a podcast, right? Like you could technically say Lilith knows everything we know and then some, because she's seen Arthur's journey. She knows all of this stuff. She knows what's going to be in the box. She knows who Lorik is. And I firmly believe she knew the power Lorik held and what a positive that would be for Arthur, and she wanted to get ahead of that and stop it. And so I so appreciate Spade pointing this out in a voice message. Thank you.
He knows everything we know, and that is very, very scary.
Yeah, it's almost like having a listener jump into the podcast. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
A listener with like evil intentions and a lot of power. I don't like it. I don't like it. Let's keep listening. We have a lot to get through and I'm very excited. I don't mean to rush everybody, but quite a lot of submissions. These were a couple of submissions that we got before the poll was up and the write-ins were submitted. So Autumn rushed to Autopsy, and I love her for that, to say what she thought the write-in should be. And I wanted to preserve that because this was so indicative, I think, of the mindset around that time.
Why, hello there, Autopsiers. Autumn here, and do you have a moment to hear the good word of the obelisk? Everyone's going to be asking, where is John? How do we defeat Cain? And yes, those are good questions and obvious ones, but they're also kind of not. So, where is John? We will find out, with patience. John can look after himself for the moment. He's also much more likely to be able to return to us since he has all his Eldritch God powers. And how do we defeat Cain? This question's way too broad and ultimately won't give us any information we don't already have. Instead, I posit the question, where is, and how do we get to, the obelisk? We know that Cain needs us to enact his plan, and neither of us know where it is. If we're able to glean its location from Lorik, we'll have a leg up and possibly be able to reach the destination before Cain, who currently seems to be totally ignoring us and under the assumption we've been taken care of. While Lilith's plan is batshit insane, if he at least has something set up with a vague idea of what's going on, then that's better than nothing. Lilith and the manager may know the location of the obelisk, but Lilith refuses to tell us, and we have no way of contacting the manager, let alone doing so discreetly. Cain isn't even aware we're out of the Dark World, so finding out now from this, for all intents and purposes, random guy is much less dangerous and less likely to catch his attention than the other two options. But say we did somehow get the answer out of Lilith, could we trust her? She can't hear us right now, so she wouldn't know that we knew where the obelisk was. This could potentially mean we could ask her anyway, just to see if she lies or not, similar to how Arthur caught Oscar out in Season 4. Knowing when she's bullshitting us will make it a lot easier for us to work with her, since we can call her on it. How would John know this information, you may ask? Shouldn't we tell him? How? Use our one question to find a way to get him back, but once he's here have absolutely no information to tell him? I think not. It's also a fair question to ask if Lorik would even know this information, but considering his Deus Ex Machina role with the tip-off about Charlie and now his tip about the shut the fuck up Lilith button, and has mentioned that things are supposed to be going this way, I feel like it's safe to assume he would know this information. I also feel the question in and of itself is better worded. It may not be concise, but there's very little room for misinterpretation or the possibility we might not get the information we're really asking for. If this counts as two questions, though, I think asking where the obelisk is would be more beneficial. We can get a more straight answer with a more direct question, and once we know where it is, Lilith trying to hide how we're getting there will only be a hindrance to the both of us. People need to put aside their feelings for the moment. We're so close to the end, and we still have very little idea of what's truly going on. We can't squander this opportunity with poorly thought out questions.
Thank you so much, Autumn, for your submission. And I know that some might say, oh, that didn't age well because we ended up having a bunch of feelings-centric poll options. But I think it is really important to note, again, a lot of us were thinking that very practically when this was posed as a write-in without knowing what Harlan's context was going to be, that this was really supposed to be an emotional beat and answers would come if we were just patient enough kind of thing. So I love this. I also think that would have been a great question if this was geared toward actually getting answers, but I'm very happy that there was such spirited conversation in the first few hours after the chapter dropped, because I think that was the most active the poll was.
It was a frenzy. That was such a cute intro, and I have heard the good word of obelisk. I love the idea of Arthur being able to take advantage of Lilith not hearing the answer to whatever this question is, but sadly, I don't think we're going to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, I think, however, great bit, great submission, A+. And Autumn, thank you so much for always thinking of Autopsy and running to submit. I think that's really sweet. It touches my heart a lot that you care and that you are out here giving your candid experience, because that is important to the show. So thank you. Autumn, by the way, is also a Voices tier patron, so did not get the opportunity to directly submit, but I do know that Autumn was taken into consideration by Great Old Ones during submission write-ins, and we saw you, Autumn, we saw everybody in there, and we were all trying to submit as much as we could that covered everybody's great suggestions. So moving on to our first question, that was our first submission that is appropriate for after knowing what those poll options are going to be.
Howdy, hello, Autopsy. Ball Control here, and I'm still adrift between worlds and unable to join you all. Oh, and what a week to be away. This week's chapter was a lot of things, but I think it boils down to this. A reminder of what genre we're in, how different Lilith is to any other being Arthur has had in his head, the folly of compassion, and most importantly, that hope and resilience are still the most important guiding lights for our journey to the end. Lorik says, without knowing that you one day will die, you would not have the strength of will to see the world as you do. I think this is the most important element of being human. It's as beautiful as it is bittersweet. The beauty in the world is that existence is fleeting and precious. As for the vote, write-in votes are always a crazy time. We could do a whole segment on the different ways the write-in votes have been handled over the course of Malevolent, and we should do that if Queen doesn't get to explaining it in this episode. The Great Old Ones put their heads together and drummed up some really interesting questions for the write-in. Harlan initially said he was only going to pick 3 for the voices to vote on, but we ended up with 7, so that just shows what good questions came up. I did have the time to throw a few questions in the ring, even a why question of my own, but I wanted to know why Charlie Dowd lies at the threshold. But I'm really glad the question why me won out over the others. It's such a simple question and one I don't think I would have thought to ask, but I think Lorik, of all people, will have a very interesting answer. I don't think we're going to get much more in the way of concrete answers about how things will go from Lorik, like how we win or whatever, but I think that Arthur could use all of the kind words and encouragement right now as he grapples with this dire and once again new situation so close to the end. Maybe Lorik will prove to have something illuminating to say about why Arthur, and maybe something to do with why Lilith chose Arthur as her favorite. Have a good autopsy, y'all. I'll be back next week, I swear. All right, signing off.
Thanks, Val. We miss you, but thank you for submitting, because I always love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, I am fascinated by all of the questions I have for Lilith, but especially why Arthur. So I think that was a great winner question, this poll.
Folly of compassion.
Yeah. I think last vote was tough. I think so last vote I had Peppers on, and her primary reason for originally voting the way she did was scared of what Lilith would do in the long run. She was thinking of protecting Arthur's long-term presence, and I can't say that was a huge motivator for me. I'll be honest. I think it's a really solid reason, but it wasn't originally my biggest reason for voting for Arthur's finger, because yes, I was, if you recall, an Arthur finger chomper, but it's true. There's a difference between extending compassion and being walked on. And I think, unfortunately, that's how it was interpreted. And I think it worked out necessary. I think it was a necessary pause. And when we were listening to the chapter earlier before Autopsy started, Misraa brought up that this moment in the chapter where Arthur is upset and yells at Lilith a little bit after he wakes up and is back in control of his body reminds her of the moment where Arthur is on the porch in episode 2 of season 1, and he just tells John he's going to sit here and he's going to be upset because so much has just happened to him and he needs a fucking second. And that made me think, I really think voters needed another moment like that. I think voters needed to hear and be reminded that Arthur is not an action hero protagonist who is going to be fine no matter what and gets back up all the time without any feelings about it. And I think we did take his resilience for granted. Even though we've listened to him go through a lot of struggle and strife and we've had those emotions alongside him, I think it was a necessary reminder that he is still pretty fragile.
And now we have Lorik to help him take space for himself.
Yes. Yes, I love that. So I will play the last of Autumn's submission, which I believe she submitted after the poll was posted.
Okay, so update post the poll drop. So all of this was before the answers submitted by the Great Old Ones went live. Goose, I love you, but oh my good lord, we are not getting a straight answer out of this question. They are so vague. Oof, Harlan probably picked the ones that'd be the most fun to answer, and like, more power to him for that, honestly. But like, what about my plans? What about my carefully constructed wording? Curse me for being too poor to upgrade for this. Ugh. Oh well, you win some, you lose some. Recently I've been doing a lot of losing sums, and then being right. Cassandra indeed. I'm not as attached to any of these questions, but I'm going to vote why me, because it has the best chance of giving us some usable information, and because I'm just curious. I want to know, man. Anyways, thanks for listening. Have a good autopsy.
Autumn, I promise it would not have mattered if you upgraded. We did submit your question about the obelisk. It just wasn't chosen. Harlan did not choose it. I'm so sorry. I know it's a bummer. I get it. I'm a very practical person, and so the minute I heard that it really wasn't about getting straight answers, I was like, oh, I got nothing then. You guys get the feeling shit out of the way, because I don't know what to write for that. So I feel you. I get it. I would have loved some strategic answers, but that means to me that we're going to get them no matter what. I think we're going to get the answers that we're looking for in the chapter, just not through the vote. And so I'm more excited that it didn't turn out to be a practical vote and it was more about feelings and emotion and story and narrative, because I'm more guaranteed answers, I think.
I am happy to avoid redundancy, and we appreciate your schemes, Autumn.
Yes. All right, let's listen to the next one.
They, she, they. I think asking why do you help is a great question because it has both pep talk potential, as many of the other questions do, and minor character lore potential. On the pep talk side, we could get something more specific about Arthur being worth helping, or something broader about how the good in the world exists and matters even when it's hard. Both things that I think would be valuable for Arthur to hear, especially since he just tried to do something nice for someone by sparing Lilith a bit of pain, and it blew up in his face. Sorry, Arthur will take the L for this one. Our bad. Also, and I admit this is the real reason I voted this, I want to know more about Lorik. I mean, he's a frog. He lives in the Dreamlands. His life purpose is helping people. I know that he had a fascinating life, and I would love even a tidbit or two about our friend. Plus, imagine if he mentioned someone else he helped years ago. Someone like, for instance, Mr. Charlie Dowd. Even the briefest mention would make me insane, and I know for a fact that I would not be the only one. In conclusion, I am holding hands with the other Why Do You Help voters. We may not have won, but I like to think we made good progress. Credit for the word progress goes to Bird.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Faye, for your submission, and thank you, Bird, for the word progress.
Would love some Lorik.
Hello, Slate here, they, them, she, her, and I'm voting why me for several reasons. But I think the biggest is that it has the possibility to yield both an important emotional beat for Arthur and potentially lore. I want to preface this by saying I almost always am an information seeker. My internal voting compass is always, I want to fucking know, but this time I think I can do both. And I think why me is a versatile enough option to both give Arthur this important, crucial emotional beat that he needs. He needs a moment of reflection. He needs a moment of strength. But this also leaves the door open for Lorik to maybe drop some lore about things that haven't been answered yet. For example, why did the manager choose this version to give the lighter to? Why did Kane choose him to begin with? Why, he's already said he can't talk about why Arthur is Lilith's favorite. Okay, well, there are a million other things that have lined up for this Arthur specifically to wind up in this spot. So We have a lot of different potential lore options, but most importantly, I want to address that why me doesn't have to be because you're special. And I think many of us agree that we love Arthur because he's not special, ostensibly. We love him because he's just some guy, right? But why me? The answer can be because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but you must do this anyway, and you can do this anyway. That is an equally lovely and fortifying response for him to receive. He can just be unlucky, but for someone to tell him, that's okay, you are here, you must go on, you can go on, that is an incredible moment of strength for him. I also, walk with me here, I want you to imagine Arthur standing before Lorik, tears in his eyes, brokenly asking, why me? Or, walk with me again, I want you to imagine Arthur remembering that he has the face of someone not to fuck with, steeling himself, and preparing to let every single person and God who fucked around find the fuck out, ask, why me? Folks, why me is the perfect option. It's versatile. We can do so much with it. It opens every single door. Harlan can run in literally any direction. Why me is the choice for you and me this week.
Thank you so much for your submission, Slate. And if you did not keep track of the time, that is okay. But I will say, Slate had the privilege of having a much longer submission without any cuts or edits because Slate was the one who wrote the winning vote. Why me? So thank you so much for submitting, Slate. Very proud of your good work as a submitter, and congratulations.
I love the infinite possibilities of answers for your winning submission. And oh, what if the answer is because you can and not because you have to?
Ugh. I love Slate is so, let me just say, Slate, I don't say this just because I'm friends with Slate. Slate is so creative and intelligent and well-spoken, and all of their submissions, you'll notice if you listen to Autopsy regularly, are beautifully worded. And that narrative at the last 30 seconds of the submission, so good and heart-wrenching and painful and amazing and deep and emotional and beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think you hit on the nail on the head as to why people love that choice so much, because we're all so in love with the idea that Arthur is not special and he is just a guy, and it's not because he has to, it's because he can. That is so important and good, and I hope that becomes more relevant. Okay, I'd like to read an email submission from Rosesofenvy. Hi Autopsy, Rosesofenvy, she, her, and I was honestly a little nervous about after seeing this was a write-in vote. Autopsy covered the last write-in, chapter 234, part 47, and I'm sure Queen will mention it, but I highly recommend listening to that episode because it does give a great overview of the process and the end result. In the end, despite some of the consternation from the winning vote, Harlan did a fantastic job writing the outcome from that question, and he will surely do the same for this chapter. I haven't been super active recently, but it's interesting seeing how much votes have changed since the last write-in. I admit that my first instinct was to think of objectives. Where do we go? What do we do? I'm honestly glad that the vote was more of a philosophical approach because we have had answers on where we go and what we do. I personally voted, how do I let go? I could have argued for any of the votes because all of them could have given an interesting answer. We've been told by the manager that we need to let go, but not how. At this point, why me is in the lead, and I'm very curious to see what comes of that. Thank you for your email, Rose. And before we move on, Pie, I forget if you answered. What did you vote this week?
I voted why me?
Oh, that's right. Okay, you won. You're good. Beautiful.
Hello, this is Myth, he, him. Now, for this specific one, I think, how do I let go and why me are the two best ones, because how do I let go? Then Arthur can get rid of le trauma, trademark, and why me can answer, why is this the specialist boy? I mean, respectfully, it's just some British dude who couldn't keep track of his daughter. He ain't that man. He ain't that guy. I'm just saying, respectfully, of course, he's not that guy. Yeah.
Thank you, Myth. Appreciate you. Yeah, he's not special, and I think that's what we love about him.
He ain't that guy.
Some British dude who couldn't keep track of his daughter is such a way to describe it. Okay, let's hear from Spade again. This was actually the first part of their submission that I thought fit better down here.
Oh, Autopsy, it's Spade. This chapter has wounded me, and I have many thoughts. But a funny thing to start off with is Lilith telling Arthur, remember, bite hard. Like he needs any help from her to bite his own finger. He's got this, Lilith. He did. On a less funny note, Lilith can take Arthur's body. That's not great. Yeah, Arthur lost the whole pinky. Wonder if the save point was even done? Not sure if we'd get that twice, though. But I'm not sure what Lilith would have done to make that not happen. And Arthur. Poor Arthur. Arthur's I think it's me hurts me. And him bringing up the ship of Theseus reminds me of him previously saying, my name is Arthur Lester, or it was. Arthur has been questioning who he is since he's come out of the tree. And I wonder if him being unsure about who he is might be helped, maybe, by Lorik referring to him as Arthur Lester. Maybe another person saying his full name may help him. Or it might not, no clue. Oh, and this part, specifically, when Arthur goes, I was prepared to die, and in the sleep of death she was there, I think she was there. And then, of course, later in the chapter, Lilith has to threaten Faro's voice against Arthur. I know it's been mentioned that Lilith has a similar laugh to Cain sometimes, and she does. However, there's a specific line Lilith says that it sounds a lot like Cain to me, and it's when she goes, see? You're starting to understand me. It sounded a lot like something Cain would both say and the tones he would use to say it. And yay, Charlie Dowd mentioned at the end. And I think the write-in's cool. We don't often get them a lot. I personally voted for Why Me? I won't get into it a lot though, since the poll's already ended. But yeah, have fun, Eels.
Thanks again, Spade. Appreciate you. And I do think you bring up a great point, which is that Lilith sounds a lot like Cain, saying that he's beginning to understand her. You know who else says that? I think the Butcher says something similar to Arthur about understanding him.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Okay. Because I think it is so poignant that Arthur gets told by multiple villains that he can understand them. He's beginning to see like them. And this constant pull on Arthur's humanity and this capacity to do good and his capacity to do bad, and how clearly outlined it is in Malevolent that nothing is black and white. Nothing in this podcast is meant to be straightforward as, like, yes, we have clear bad guys and clear good guys, but they are always people, and people can be capable of anything. And I love how that's dealt with in Malevolent. So I really liked the callback to yet another type of villain saying, you get me, you understand me, you could be like me. Arthur, don't you want to go apeshit?
I loved the callback to my name is Arthur Lester, or it was.
Oh.
Because obviously Arthur struggles with his identity in a very different way than John Doe does. But the ship of Theseus analogy, Harlan, when did you steal my philosophy textbook?
Yes, I saw a lot of references to Ship of Theseus, which is not something I even knew about until this chapter. I didn't until the last couple votes anyway. People had been bringing it up quite a bit in regards to the pinky, and so I learned about it then, and I think it is fascinating. Let's listen to the next one. We're almost at the home stretch.
Misraa again. So my question that made it to the poll was, will I see my daughter again? I tried to think of not necessarily a question that would give us the most information of what to do next, but what would make the most sense for Arthur to want to ask in the story, and of course his heart and mind is always with Faro. Faro has been a source of hope and the will to keep going for Arthur, and hope is what will save us all, as Aaliyah has said. And a thought of where Faro could be. Is she in the Dark World or somewhere else? Is there anything beyond the Dark World after death, and is there any chance of seeing her again there? Has plagued Arthur through these last seasons. I think getting confirmation about these things could be a great source of renewed hope for Arthur, though I wish I had worded this question a bit better. Something more of like, is there a place beyond the Dark World that he'll see Faro again? I'm not campaigning for my own question, as there are so many great ones that are in this poll, and I'm actually kind of nervous of what the answer of this could be.
Thank you, Misraa, for your submission. And yes, Misraa was one of those who got their question up on the poll that was finalized. So congratulations, good job. A plus Harlan points, I guess.
You were braver than I am to ask that question. That is a question I am too scared to ask.
Yeah, a lot of these questions, I mean, some of the questions were just downright like, I don't know that I want to know the answer to some of these. Oh boy. So good job to my fellow great old ones. I think you guys submitted a great range of questions. Let's listen to another one from another person who contributed to the write-in process.
Is Kane right? I know some people were a bit surprised to see this question in the list, but I feel like it's a really good opportunity for a really significant conversation and perspective. A lot of the other questions are more on a smaller scale and more personal, which can be really important, especially when working through something challenging. But this is really a multiversal scale of an issue, and taking it back to that level of, am I just being selfish by trying to stop this? Is it ultimately the right call? Especially in the face of being berated by Lilith and her declaration that it is her goal to strip him of hope and his concept that humanity has value. In that situation, is wiping everything out not better or worth considering? And some might say the answer is easy, but it can still be important to hear it, to get that external reinforcement of what you know that you know, but is getting hard to hold. Arthur clings to the words of others all the time, whether it's Daniel talking about not having to let them win, whether it's poetry or John's "fuck yeah, you did it, Arthur." That external source of something to agree with and cling to is really important to Arthur. And I feel like having Lorik present to him the bigger picture and reinforce that, yes, this matters. What you're doing matters. So what you're going through is worth it, could be really significant to add to his stash of things to cling to and use as a shield against Lilith's bashing or whatever else may come against them. She didn't even let him finish his "this will pass" as he's about to bite his finger. She cuts him off and tells him to just do it. That's like his lifeline, and she is cutting every string that she can to do exactly what she said and wear him down. And the more that Arthur can shore up his foundation, the better off he'll be in fighting her, in bringing her around, in enduring her, and in achieving the ultimate goal of all of this and stopping Kane.
Thank you, Nikki. I know we have a part 2, but Pi, do you have any thoughts?
I loved that question as an option so much, and it reveals so much that Arthur is even considering this as something that he needs to ask to seek reassurance for. Lilith is getting to him, and he's questioning whether all of this pain is still worth enduring.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Nikki's extremely well spoken and one of the most legacy members that is still pretty active in the Discord and always has such wisdom to impart. Nicky is also a name you might recognize if you have ever needed to look anything up from the Invictus stream, spooky streams, or like any of the more niche lore that is not specific to Malevolent. Nicky pretty much knows everything about that stuff. Incredible powerhouse. Let's listen to the second section of Nicky's message.
Why do you help? I'm really interested in the answer to this question because we actually know very little about Lorik. We know that he's a canna. We don't know what a canna is other than that they answer questions. We know that Lorik has knowledge about a variety of things, including the future. We know that he helped Charlie to escape the Dreamlands and told him to be on the lookout and help Arthur later on. And he put himself in a position to encounter Arthur and give him clear directions. He has sought Arthur out now to help teach him how to put Lilith in timeout and get a break from her raving. Why does he do this? Does he feel compelled? Is it in his nature? Is it because he chooses to? And why help Arthur specifically? And does he have any additional knowledge about Arthur? Does he just know that, well, this is the person that's in the situation, and so he's the one available? All a lot of questions that we might get some answers to. Also, beyond just learning information, it's a great opportunity to just show support to Arthur that, yes, you are the one in your specific role, but there are other people out there that you don't know or don't know well that are serving their own roles in their own way, helping you, helping others, getting things into position to protect reality. And that can be really encouraging, especially when you're feeling alone. Just that spark that, well, no, there's more going on. There's more support. You just might not know all of it or the extent of it or feel it, but you can know that it's there. And sometimes that's enough.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Nicky. And I think that's really something that can help carry us all through. We may not know about it yet, we may not feel it or see it, but there are supports out there and people are trying.
I associate the Dreamlands so much with either Arthur and John and now Arthur and Lilith alone against the world. And both seasons, there has always been Lorik. Even if they don't know about it, there is someone out there trying to do some help.
Yeah, and that's great. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great message about life, too. Okay, then I will move on to this last voice message by yet another person who submitted a chosen poll option.
Hi there. My name is Pan. I use he, they pronouns. My question, will it all be okay, was chosen during the write-in this week. Though I had no context for it, this was the first phrase that echoed in my mind. My initial thought process behind submitting this was that I yearned for more thematic and emotional pull this late into the story. As questions similar to it followed, I began to think about my reasoning for asking it. All of the questions this week are good, and some even came as a surprise. I don't think any of them should be put down at all. When I thought of my question, it came not from a place of seeking out definitive and prophetic answers in nature. I don't think Lorik is omnipotent, and I don't think he can answer questions in the way some people think he can. He can't tell us things that Cain or Lilith or the king could tell us. But I do think he can give us a motivational answer. Right now, Arthur has lost his foundation and best friend as he approaches a standoff with a world-ending god and his father who stitches the very threads of the universe together in his dream. He must be fucking terrified. I mean, like, I know I would be. I think it's important as we approach the finish line to this grand narrative Harlan has spun for us that we deserve the right to ask if it will be okay. Admittedly, it's a scary question. Laura could say no. Sometimes things won't be okay. And you have to accept that. However, even if this is the case, I think Lorik will find a way to use his answer to motivate Arthur. Will it all be okay isn't about whether we live or die in the end. It's about seeking out comfort. Something to soothe our soul as we reach the point of no return. It's about eating the elephant, one bite at a time. We're taking those last ones now. We just need the words to carry us there. That's what I think we can get by asking this question. Arthur has loved and Arthur has lost. Yet despite it all, he still fights. This will be kindle to our flame until we reunite with John and face down Cain. That was my thought process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pan. That was beautiful, and I appreciate hearing what went into your submission.
Such eloquent reasoning. And I would be really interested to see what Lorik's answer would have been. But it has to be yes. Because I don't know what I'm going to do if the answer isn't yes.
It's one of those questions, again, one of those questions that I'm like, I don't know if I want to hear Lorik's answer. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I just got over Arthur dying.
I'm confident that Lorik would have only given something reassuring.
Yeah.
But what if?
Yeah, because I think that's what's supposed to be in this moment. Pie, is there anything that you think is important for people in the future to know about this vote, or about your experience with this vote, or about this episode or time of Malevolent? Anything you want to share?
I think we've pretty thoroughly covered everything.
Yeah, it was a lot. We had a lot of submissions, which I think gave us some great perspective from all angles. Was it surprising to you to see what questions were chosen for the poll?
I mean, I have no idea what Harlan's plans are, but they all seem to fit together. I don't think there's an incorrect option.
Yeah. Yeah, this vote does not feel like an obvious one. I don't think there's an obviously correct answer. So glad we're in agreement about that at least. And, you know, for the record, I did flip my vote around a bunch. Again, it doesn't really matter since the poll's closed, but I did end up voting for Will It All Be Okay in the end. Partially, honestly, because it was something I needed to hear. I didn't actually give it all that much thought beyond that. I've been having a really hard time myself, and so I would have loved to have Lorik say something to comfort me, but that's not necessarily the most interesting or fun or like rewarding answer for the poll. I think I just did one of those things that I say I never do and voted for myself rather than like for all the usual poll rambly things that I say. So that was a very personal vote for me this week, and I'm still really happy that Why Me ended up winning. I genuinely would not have been disappointed with any of these. I think they're all great.
I'm so happy that Arthur got to pick something quote unquote selfish and not trying to get to the next goalpost as quickly as possible. I'm so happy that he gets to just have a minute and sit with Lorik.
Yeah, I think Arthur deserves that. After everything he's been through, I think he gets to be a little, not even selfish, but I think it's good for him to have a moment that is just about Arthur. Thank you so much for joining me, Pi. You are fantastic, and I look forward to all of your arguments and submissions in the future. And if you ever want to come hang out again, you are more than welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, of course, to Harlan Guthrie, the sole creator of Malevolent. Without his labor of love for a story he wants to tell, we wouldn't be here. To join the live recording, submit your own message, get in touch with me, and more, visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. The official Invictus Discord server is open to the public and includes a channel just for Malevolent Autopsy fans. We also have our own private, patrons-only channel. Finally, thank you to Misraa, Nicky, Vol Control, and everyone who has helped create and maintain Malevolent Autopsy. These friends are also volunteers who donate time and energy to help put together this love letter to Malevolent. The horrors persist.
But so do we!